Chapter 9 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex is here, and it goes hard in the paint. We get so much information in this chapter. Even though the chapter is one of the most action-packed chapters we've had so far, Boruto just keeps giving us more and more peak fiction. In this video, I'm going to go over what we learned this chapter and what the most significant moments mean, and what I think is going to happen based on the evidence. But first, if you guys wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing to the channel, it would mean the world to me. Alright, let's get into it. The chapter opens up with Jura straight up confirming that Himawari has the Nine Tails chakra, and that Himawari has no idea. Shikadai proves that he's Shikamaru's son when he very adeptly gets info from Jura and tries to stall while backup arrives. But Jura goes straight for the kill, trapping Himawari in a wood-style tree prison, which Team 10 expertly breaks her out of, and then counterattacks. By the way, I love that Hidari is just standing around for all of this action. There have been some great moments with Hidari in the last couple of chapters, and I have a Hidari theory that I'll discuss later in the video that I think might be kind of fun if it comes to fruition. Alright, so while all of this is going on, Delta is desperately trying to wake Kawaki up, and we see that Amado is watching Kawaki through Delta's eyes. But he appears to be talking about Jura when he says, "What the heck is this guy?" That's an interesting moment for Amado. To not have any idea what Jura and the Shinju are means that this wasn't something that Amado anticipated. This is not a part of Amado's master plan, and could potentially be something that totally derails it. So then it cuts to Boruto, who's just, chilling in Orochimaru's hideout with Kashin Koji. I'll get into that in a second, but I want to talk about these panels because in just 2 pages, Kishimoto has given us the likely most reasonable answers for 2 of the biggest questions we've had in Boruto Part 2 so far. Those questions are 1, how did Boruto know that Code was attacking Sarada? And now we know that Boruto's got toad spies all over Konoha and seemingly several other places that clue him into whenever anything is going on. And question number 2, which is, where has Boruto been staying this whole time? And I listed Orochimaru's hideout as being one of my top 3 guesses, but I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. And for it to be Orochimaru's place has huge implications. Y'all know he looked too fresh to be slumming it in the woods. And one thing here that's absolutely worth pointing out is that from the couple of pages that we get here, it's not totally clear whether Boruto and Kashin Koji are in Orochimaru's current hideout in the Hidden Sound Village, or if they're in the old hideout from Naruto Shippuden. But my money is on them being in Orochimaru's most recent hideout that we see in Naruto Gaiden and in Boruto's anime. And why this might matter is that Orochimaru himself probably knows where Boruto is either way. But if Boruto is actually hiding in the Hidden Sound Village, that definitely means that Orochimaru has been an active participant in Boruto's hiding out, and moreover, the rest of Team Taka are in on it too. In fact, Boruto could be heading it up, and we can even see a snakehead with what looks like a crystal orb or a giant crystal ball coming out of the wall. Very similar to what the third Hokage uses in OG Naruto. Needless to say, these are big implications if Boruto has both Jiraiya's clone and Orochimaru, 2 of the 3 legendary Sannin, helping him. Also, interesting that Kashin Koji is sending Boruto on this recon mission, since time might be of the essence, but it's not like Boruto is going straight into the battle. He's actually gathering evidence and trying to see whether it's the Shinju or not. Then it goes back to Jura and Team 10, and Jura makes it clear that he plans to devour Himawari to get more info. Shikadai tries to delay the inevitable by asking him more questions, but Jura is making it clear that Team 10 can either hand Himawari over, or it's going to be a cleanup on aisle 10. I'm sorry about that. That was awful. Kawaki wakes up and Delta chides him for being reckless because she promised Ada that she'd keep him safe. But Kawaki senses Boruto, who's at the village triangle examining the crime scene, so instead of going to go rescue Team 10, he goes off to go confront Boruto. And at this point, Boruto is just straight up turned into Ninja Batman, but 100 times cooler. Kawaki rolls up on Boruto, thinking he's the big shot, and then we get one of the most disrespectful moments in the entire story so far. Honestly, I think this moment's even more disrespectful than when Boruto stepped on Code's face in Chapter 1. because after dodging Kawaki's chakra rods and closing the gap in an instant, Boruto gut punches Kawaki so hard that for a second chapter in a row, Kawaki turns into a DBZ fodder character. He looks like Vegeta fighting Cell for the first time. Then Boruto stands over him, calls him pitiful, and says, "Do you even train, bro?" And at this point, you can add Delta to the harem. Her robot bits are leaking coolant. She needs an oil change. Look at how she looks at him. This is Delta we're talking about. Mean, evil Delta, and she is like, "Don't go." Meanwhile, Kawaki is rolling around on the ground thinking about all of the L's he's taken in the last 8 chapters, wondering if it'll ever let up. Let's list them off. First, he gets face planted by a claw grime in chapter 2. Then he gets hoodwinked by Code in chapter 3. Then in chapter 4, Kawaki psychs himself up to fight Boruto, only for Boruto to be unbothered enough to just dip. In chapter 6, Damon roasts Kawaki, sending him into a rage, only for Kawaki to get KO'd by Mitsuki a couple of pages later. And in chapter 8, Kawaki literally gets kicked across town by Jura after getting the slip from Boruto yet again. And now in chapter 9, we now definitively know that Kawaki is fodder at this point. He is a full-on fraud. He's early Drake. Quentin Miller is writing all of his verses. He's down bad. In fact, Kawaki has spent almost half of the story so far with his face in the dirt. He had his face in the dirt in chapter 2, he had his face in the dirt in chapter 6, he had his face in the dirt in chapter 7, and now he's got his face in the dirt again. So Kawaki does the only thing he knows how to do. Being the one-trick pony he is, he goes into karma mode, which triggers Boruto's karma mode, and seemingly forces Boruto to escape because he can't control his karma. And we get this panel where Kawaki is in his dark, sinister thoughts, realizing that Boruto can't control his karma. And I want to take a second to examine this Kawaki versus Boruto encounter, because there are multiple moments in this encounter where Kawaki prioritizes attacking Boruto over the safety of the village, beyond all reason. Kawaki is so convinced that Boruto is the only source of evil that he's willing to sacrifice the entire village in order to kill Boruto. Meanwhile, there's a tree monster that, as far as Kawaki knows, whose sole mission seems to be devouring Naruto, and Kawaki would rather chase Boruto. How is that rational? Kawaki is obsessed with keeping Naruto safe. That's why he locked him up in the Daikokuten to begin with. And now, instead of trying to keep Naruto safe by defeating these tree monsters, he would rather chase Boruto. We're being shown how irrational Kawaki is now, and how radicalized and unhinged he's become in the last 3 years. There's a reason Ada seems to be scared of him. There's a reason Shikamaru feels the need to go behind his back. And Kawaki is just getting started. He's willing to throw a live grenade into the village just to mix it up to see if he can damage Boruto. And that's probably a much bigger deal than anything Jura is going to do in the village. Because Jura, as weird and predatory as he is acting out of logic. He wants answers, and he thinks devouring the Nine Tails is going to get him those answers. Kawaki has no clue how he's going to beat Boruto. But maybe forcing Boruto to activate his karma will give him a leg up? He doesn't know. Or maybe it'll trigger Momoshiki, who then goes on a murder spree and destroys the village to the extent that we saw at the opening scene of part 1. That's what I think could be happening here. It's not Jura, it's not Amado, it's not Damon, it's not necessarily even Kawaki himself that destroys Konoha. It could very well be Momoshiki or Borushiki via karma activation. Based on what we know now, that's what seems to be foreshadowed. But hold on, Adi, because doesn't Jura blow up a chunk of the village with the tailed beast bomb from his eyes literally on the next page? He sure does. And despite that, Jura is the one showing restraint. He can't blow up Himawari because he wants to devour her. And after he sees how hard Team 10 is working to keep her safe, he begins to become curious about what it is that makes humans act outside of their own survival instincts. I have a strong feeling that Jura is getting redeemed in this story, in some way or the other. Jura being that inquisitive, learning, and constantly adapting based on what he learns each step, that is the sign of somebody that can develop and fix themselves. That doesn't sound nearly as villainous as Kawaki right now. Also, before I get going into Himawari and the apparent rebirth of Kurama, I want to touch on this theory that I have about Hidari, because you see, Hidari is very clearly a strong opponent, and yet he hasn't done a damn thing so far. Outside of dodging a couple of Kawaki's chakra rods and mixing it up with Boruto for a panel, he hasn't done a damn thing. I do think his moment is coming soon though when Sarada arrives. But I want to raise this point because when the Shinju first revealed themselves, and in the next couple of chapters after that, many people were convinced as readers that Hidari was somehow host to Sasuke's higher intellect, that he was going to be the one to backstab Jura, because Hidari seemed to have the hardest time processing what he was and who he should devour. It seemed like Hidari was the most curious out of the bunch. Hidari was the one who spoke the least. But now in the last couple of chapters, we've had these funny moments where Hidari is showing himself to be the polar opposite of Sasuke. Where Sasuke is intuitive and always suspicious and unassuming, Hidari is like, is Naruto here? The humans are getting away. Is that okay? These humans are fools. We should totally kill them. These are weird moments for someone who's supposed to be made with Sasuke's DNA and chakra, which makes me wonder if that's why the Bug Shinju is so cocky and confident, because in reality, Bug was a scaredy cat that was absolutely terrified of all the members of Kara. The same analogy works for Moegi and Matsuri. Moegi is Konohamaru's sweet, unassuming, mild-mannered, ride-or-die friend that speaks so highly of him. Meanwhile, Matsuri is outspoken and loud with her intentions. Her whole personality is opposite to Moegi. So what does that mean for Hidari? Well, for plot purposes, who knows? But for entertainment purposes, I think we're finally gonna get the answer to what if Sasuke was as dumb as Naruto? And look, are we most likely getting Sarada versus Hidari next chapter? Yeah, and I think Hidari will probably get redeemed, but it would be great if he was an idiot. Maybe Jura sits that one out too. Maybe that's just Shinju culture. Who knows? Jura is only interested in Himawari at this point, so who knows how they choose to operate. Speaking of which, Himawari finally comes face to face with her inner Biju spirit who looks and talks just like Kurama. A much smaller, cuter, cuddlier Kurama, but Kurama nonetheless. And to the people that are like, this isn't Kurama, it's a new tailed beast altogether. Maybe this is a Baby Yoda to Grogu situation. But to counter that, we already know that tailed beasts basically respawn after they die. If the baby Kurama inside of Himawari was truly a baby, why would he call Himawari little girl? I think that there are any number of reasons that Kurama is hiding inside of Himawari. But the reason that comes to mind is that Kurama maybe doesn't want to join the Ten Tails in the astral plane. Or maybe because his chakra was inside of at least one other person, so he was able to reawaken his consciousness inside of Himawari using that chakra. I don't know if he just respawned that Kurama would have just reappeared inside of another person. If Kurama really just respawned, then he'd be out in the wild, waiting to be sealed inside of another Jinchuriki. But what do you guys think? Is the Nine-Tailed Fox actually Kurama, or is it more of a Grogu-Rama? What role is the Nine-Tailed Fox going to play as the story unfolds, and how many roster spots does Boruto have in his harem? Definitely get in the comments and let me know what you think. And if you haven't already, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Alright, thanks. Toodles.